answer. You said when you write a movie, you want to watch it yourself and you want to follow your curiosity. Is there anything you wouldn't do, even if you thought, I would watch this, but it's not for me to make this? Like maybe a horror or something that's a genre or a style you think, this is something I would not touch?
I'll take that. I don't necessarily feel the same way about if you like the movie you're making is something that you would absolutely love to watch, because I get lost in it, I think, when you start thinking about it from the audience perspective. And I'm more like, this is a movie that I just need to get out of my system. It feels more like that to me. And so there's, like for instance, I'm not the biggest fan of musicals, but there's musicals that will watch and I can absolutely appreciate. There's tons of movies out there that I absolutely love that are not in my system at all. And I don't think it's the kind of thing where when you see a movie and you love it, that means it's something you could have made. I just think like, things are so specific, and I've had this happen to me where there was my first movie was something I wrote 11 years before I made it, and I walked away from it. And when I wrote it, it was like coming out of me, like it was something that I needed to do at the time. And then I had like distance from it for 11 years, and it felt almost like someone else wrote it. And I made that movie out of necessity because I was supposed to make another movie, and one of the people's parents passed away, and so I had to kind of put a pin in it. I had this tax code, and I just jammed the movie out. And that movie to me, like I really am glad I made it, but it wasn't something that I felt like at the time was something that was coming like deeply inside of me. And from that point on, I really wanted to make sure from that point on, everything I did was, it was current. And these things are almost like your time capsules of where your brain's at, because first of all, you go through it, you make it, there's a movie you write, which is like the synthesis about writing. There's a movie you write, there's a movie you shoot, and there's a movie you edit, and they're all completely different. And some people, when they make the movie that they write, they're just trying to nail that script. And I think that's sort of not fair to the movie, because there's so many things that, I mean, you guys have no idea if you have never made a movie about how many things go wrong. There's like every single thing you can think of that can go wrong pretty much goes wrong, and you're just trying to guide it through this. It's like the opening of Saving Private Ryan, when everyone's like coming out of that boat, just bullets are whizzing by. It's like you're not gonna get your whole crew on that shore. Like there are a bunch of them are gonna die, and you're so, and this is like, I'm going on so many tangents here. but the gist is,
everyone's gonna die, basically.
We're all gonna die. Life is horrible. No, but the overall thing what I'm trying to tell you is, it's such a specific moment when you're making a movie, and there's some people who treat these things sort of like what you're talking about very preciously, where it's this thing that you're working on for so many years, and you finally get your chance to make it, and you have to honor this thing. And I've just learned like it's more just like, you gotta be really spontaneous and in the moment, because things are constantly changing and your tastes are constantly changing and the world is constantly changing. And so everything you're making is so very specific to that moment that it's not like you're like, and now I'm gonna do a science fiction movie that, you know, also has singing in it. Like it's just, I feel like people can do that if they're kind of hacky, but I feel like all the guys up here have a real connection to their pieces. And there is obviously because it's like always timeless and people relate to it, but there is an absolute timeliness to the time that you create that and where you are in your life in that moment. And it's almost just like this little document of where you're at. And people that I think care about their movies, that's what's going on. And there's people that don't care, and you can just like arbitrarily place them anywhere and they can make a movie. So I think it's like you had to make that movie because what you're going through is such a nightmare to get it going that you really have to believe in it so much that it can't just be like, what about this? Sort of like
yeah, you better really, really love it, but at the same time, I agree with Jeff 100%. You can't be, you have to be fluid. Filmmaking, like if you get, I don't care if you love your script or whatever. It's like, oh, but it can't change a word. Like that's not how it works. At least that's not how it works for me. I don't consider myself the Woody Allens or the Paul Thomas Andersons or the Coen brothers of the world, who I think are truly genius, and the actors want to say it word for word because of their track record. It's a collaborative process. Everything goes wrong. Actors have ideas. In your heart, you're like, well, I'm going to be changing this in the edit anyway. It's like, get through it, get as many options as you can, and don't be precious about it. Just to echo that.
And then if the question is about whether we could do something that we wouldn't necessarily want to go see, is that what the idea was?
More like, if there's something like, if you had an idea for a horror film, do you think, I don't want to make a horror film, so I won't touch that, even though I find that idea interesting. Or I, find
I have those ideas all the time, but I don't have enough stamina to do it. Like, I've got too many things that I care about that I really want to do that, like, I
Right.
can't, like, I could think of, like, a Transformers 7 that would be, like, that's pretty cool idea, Transformers 7. I can't spend the time writing it because I don't.
Yeah, it's like having kids. Like, yeah, I could have a kid that had like, 14 arms and like had like walked backwards or something. But it's like, but you're not gonna do that. You want to raise like a certain number of kids that you really love and want to put your heart into. It's just hard.
Well, I'll say, I don't know if you guys have done this, but I've written stuff straight up just for money, just to support myself. And, I think even with that stuff, I've written films that I would never want to direct in a million years, not because I, thought it was bad, but just because that it wasn't the type of movie that I was interested in. But even as a writer, I think, there'd be an open writing assignment, and you always have to kind of look for your way in, what's your connection to it. So if it's, I've written like a family, movie, like for kids, like a sort of, there's a movie called Magic Camp that we did a rewrite on. And, I love movie School of Rock. And so our sort of take on it was like, well, what is our connection to, a movie like School of Rock? And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician when I was in like first grade. And so I was obsessed with magic. And so I was trying to tap into that part of me that wanted to be a magician when I was in first grade. That's not a movie that I would ever want to direct necessarily, but I had to look for a way into that to be able to tell that story authentically and write something that at least I thought was good, even though it wasn't something I would want to direct. I don't know, is that sort of tangentially addressed?
If you want to make money, you're like, oh, I got an idea. It's about like this ghost that like that, whatever. So, I mean, not like this story. I meant more like a ring type ghost, not in the blanket type ghost. But I think like you could be like, I come up with ideas all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, I can make a movie about like a car, like a guy that gets locked in a car, like automatically, whatever. And it's like, you could be like, oh yeah, people will go see that. People might like that. I have that in me. I could write that. I'm not going to. Because I don't give a shit, really. I'm not going to make that movie.
I have a good example of this, because like I thought of a movie that'd be such a good romantic comedy, and I would never touch it with a 10-foot pole, and I also think it would suck. Because like I think the movie was terrible, but I had this idea of like,
Give it away.
Yeah, I'm giving it to any of you guys.
Great, go. Get ready.
Do you guys have kiss cams here? Do you know what that is? Like
a
you go to a sporting event, like the
is it a movie called Kiss Cam?
Yeah, Kiss Cam.
Got it.
So like
I already know what this movie is.
Yeah. So it's like, Kiss Cam is like if you're at a sporting event, the camera zooms in on two people, so it'll be like on these two right here, and then the expectation is for them to turn to each other and kiss. And the idea is that they're generally couples. Every once in a while, and you get like weird combos like father and daughter and stuff, and it just gets awkward. But the idea would be a kiss cam, and you follow the 4 or 5 people to get to that point. Almost like a crash movie, and the only thing that's connecting them is this kiss cam, which honestly, it's like, it feels like that. I hate myself that I even thought of that. But like, that's a movie that I would never ever watch. It sucks, and like, I could see that being a thing. Like,
I think Kiss Cam could be good.
But one other example, like you were saying, like writing jobs for money, like Pete's Dragon was something where I wasn't going to direct it. And that was a film where I was like, okay, I could probably write a good kids movie, and then someone else will direct it, and I'll have had that experience. But then the weird thing happened was like in the process of writing, I got really attached to it, and it became really personal. And then I was like, actually, I really want to make this movie. But it started off exactly the opposite, not the opposite, but just it felt like a fun
a job, right?
A job, yeah, exactly.
So I think the takeaway is you have to have a connection to it, no matter what.
Unless
it's not something you would direct, or
unless it's
a lot of money.
Kiss Cam.
How much money would it take for you to write and direct Kiss Cam?
yeah, I would. You like literally, you'd be like, we could do $1 million, and I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll do it.
I personally think that sounds amazing.
I'm stealing this.
I would be like
Yeah,
that.
I said it to her as a joke. I was like, because I was at a game, and I was like, you told you a movie like this. She's like, we gotta work on this. She did like Legally Blonde, and she does like movies like that. And it was like she like totally like jumped onto it, and I just stalled from like being able to her develop it because it was just like, my nightmare.
I saw a question here. Yes, in the front row.
Hello, I just have a general question about creating story, because you must have come to some point that you just can't figure out how to going on with the character or the situation. So what would you do to open up your mind to solve this in this case?
I have a good trick for that. Like, just sort of with these guys, the same thing, where I like definitely procrastinate, and I'm not the most disciplined person with my schedule. So when you're working, you kind of hit a point where just like everything is more interesting than what you're doing. I noticed the trick to get through that little sort of speed bump that you're at is just to write past it. Just keep going and come back to it. Just write the worst possible moment, like that, whatever that version of that moment is. Like even if it's like a really integral scene to get through it, just write the bad version of it and go on to the next bit. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, and then come back to it and rewrite it. Because what you end up doing if you get stuck in that moment is you just start overthinking it and then you just get paralyzed.
If you know the basic gist of what's going to happen there, like it's the scene where he tells her he's sick or whatever, whatever example. I just put brackets and I'm in bold and I'm like, he tells her he's sick here.
And then you just jump past it.
Just go to the next scene.
That's exactly right.
Don't get lost in it because you're just going to sit there with it and obsess. Keep going to the end and then come back. Writing is, as they say, rewriting.
But
Right?
writing is the worst, and I think
Yeah.
when you're in those moments, that's just like giving yourself like your reptile brain enough reason to just get out there and like and you just need to keep going.
Because there's no answer. You can't. It's not ready to come to you.
Yeah, it'll take months.
It's just not ready. So just move on. Because you're gonna have to rewrite anyway. You're gonna have to go back through a million times anyway. Once you go to the last page and hit the end or fade to black or whatever, you're not done. You just begun.
So you write fade to black in your scripts?
I write cut to black sometimes. Yeah. And the end. Cut to black, the end. Yeah.
Fiend.
Yeah. Right at the end of your scripts, it's just nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing out there. It's over.
They're just like, oh.
Like, oh, the page that's not there, I'm assuming it's over.
I like to be very definite about it. See different styles.
I find that when I'm feeling uninspired, I am usually not consuming enough, and so I'll try to, there's this new thing that's my favorite thing called Filmstruck. That's like an app. I don't know if you guys have it here, but it's like, it's like Turner Classic Movies and Criterion Collection, and they have just like every movie, old classic movie on there. And I'll just pick a random old movie and just start watching it, and you'd be surprised how just consuming anything, whether it's reading a book or going to a museum or watching a classic movie that you haven't seen before, will just knock something loose, and you'll suddenly just get a flash of inspiration, or you'll see a connection or an idea for a shot or something that will just stimulate you. So I find it's helpful sometimes to walk, where you're saying push through, I sometimes find it's helpful just to walk away and not think about it and think about something else, and you'll be surprised if, that I don't know.
Can you guys write with movies playing in the background silent?
I like to distract it.
Yeah, there's some music.
I'll put the same movie on just on a loop, just have it just keep playing on a loop sometimes in the background.
I also, not that this is completely exactly yes, but also I found doing things that are like use the minimal amount of brain power, like walking, driving, taking a shower, whatever. Those are the places where you tend to get the most ideas. For me, like when I'm driving, I get a lot of ideas because I think you're sort of like on autopilot, so your brain can wander, but you're doing enough that you're keeping yourself awake and engaged. And I always find that's like a really helpful way of coming up with ideas.
Yeah, get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Like, allow yourself to get bored. I think there's like an instinct, especially nowadays, I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else, but like when you have like 10 minutes of boredom, or you're waiting in line for something, or you're waiting for somebody at a restaurant, where you take out your phone and you start reading an article or scrolling through Instagram. Or
don't do that. Right?
I think you're missing out on
like thinking time.
Yeah.
People don't sit around and just think. That's crucial stuff. Like, just sitting around and not doing anything but thinking. Stuff will come, because everybody goes on their phone now. Everybody's like, oh, I've got to wait 2 seconds for something. I'm going to get on my phone. Just look around. You'll see some weird shit happen. That's where the movies come.
I saw a question here. Yes. Thank you all today. All of you are director and writer, so I want to ask, when you cast the actors, will you change the character so it more fits the actors? And I also have another question for David Lowery. can you tell us more anything about your new film, Old Man and the Gun? And also, I want to know what makes you always invite Casey Affleck to star in your film? Thank you.
What dirt do you have on Casey?
Yeah, everyone does at this point. The first question is, when I write, I usually don't have actors in mind, like almost never, with one exception, which is The Old Man and the Gun. And I usually completely rewrite the script once, but not completely, but I'll rewrite the dialogue for the characters. Like if I know who the actor is, I'll like reshape it for them to like fit their strengths once, we've cast it. I can answer all the other questions first, or you guys can elaborate on that.
Yes, to answer your question, the question for everybody, the great example in Ingrid Goes West, I don't know if you saw it, but is O'Shea Jackson Jr., which that character was written as much more like a kind of nerdy, awkward guy, and I started meeting with actors, and I met with some really great nerdy, awkward actors who play those types of characters, and I just thought, there's just something's not exciting me about these people, and it's not their fault, it's my fault. I wrote a character that wasn't that interesting to me anymore, and Aubrey suggested O'Shea Jackson Jr., and as soon as she said that, my brain lit up, and I was like, oh my god, that's such a much better version of that character, and we really just leaned into that and let him, shape the character, and also, wrote stuff for him based on his version of the character, and I think it made the film 1,000 times better for doing that, so yeah.
You gotta roll with your actors. They're the extension of you. They're the ones telling the story, truly. They're the ones that everyone will remember and talk about, and they're your messengers. And so if they're not comfortable with something, or they don't feel something, or it doesn't suit them at all, and they're not comfortable with it, there's no point in making them, well, I wrote it this way, so you better do it that way. You have to listen to your actors and say, well, what are you comfortable doing? And very similar to what happened with Matt, I just made a film and Ted Danson was in it. And Ted read the script, he's like, I like it, but he's like, it's a little stiff, can we do something more fun? And he just said simply, can I be like a pothead? And I was like, yes. And we rewrote the pages 2 nights before we were shooting. Rewrote the entire character based on that one suggestion. And then we gave him the new pages, and he was like, this is what I'm talking about. This is great. So they usually have an instinct beyond you as the writer that I think you should listen to. 9 times out of 10, they're like, if I can do it like this, it's gonna be rad. So I always kind of listen to them and let them. It's that collaboration. So I say roll with it. Yeah.
I've done it both ways. Coming up as a writer for years, I really did not get in the habit of thinking of actors when I was writing it. I just thought of characters and nailing their parts and knowing that any actor that's worth their salt will be able to inhabit a character and make it work. And then I sort of got sick of that because I started feeling like it became so much about the writing and not about the interplay. And so the last 2 things I worked on, I actually tailored the story to the actors. And I would sit down with the actors, and if I didn't know them personally, just sort of get a feeling for them, just how they are naturally, and make it less of a sort of contrivance to create this character, and more about finding that character within who they are as a person, as a real person, and then building to their strengths. And there's just so many moments where I came from a place where writing was considered something like really holy, and like the script is very important. I'm not like David Mamet or something, but like there's almost a music to the writing where I wanted everything to sound really natural and colloquial, as if it was the way people really talked, and that if one person was kind of messing it up, you lose that whole thing. And then I was like, well, why don't I just have people really talk and not force this thing where there's overlapping dialogue and people are showing off and having tangential thoughts. Just let it happen for real. And I found that to be really rewarding, and sort of like what you're saying, it is a real collaboration with you and the actor. And if it feels phony, it's going to feel a million times more phony on the screen this big. So you got to find a way to make it feel as natural and authentic as possible. And for me, my solution was to just let the actor inhabit the role instead of vice versa.
And I can segue into the rest of the questions from that, because once you've worked with an actor and you understand them, it's really fun to write more parts for them. And so I like to work with the same people repeatedly, because I can kind of just dig into who they are. And there's a familiarity there. It just makes the whole process easier. It makes it more fun. You're working with friends. So I try to work both in front of the camera and behind the camera with the same people repeatedly. And so the work with Casey, I've gone to work with Rooney twice now, and then I've worked with Robert Redford twice, and I did Old Man the Gun movie I'm finishing now with him. And it's just great to have, like, that was a movie that he and I met on that movie, and he had this article he wanted to adapt, and he asked me if I would take a crack at it. And it was great, and I wrote this part, and I didn't know him yet. I just knew his movies, and I wrote a part that would not have worked for him. I wrote the movie in a way that he could not have played it, I don't think, or played it well. But then because I was able to cast him in Pete's Dragon, I got to work with him for a couple months. And that was a part where, much like your experience with Ted Danson, when he read the script, was like, I don't really think this is exactly right for me. And we're like, great, we'll rewrite it really quickly with your input and make it more appropriate for you. And he said yes and did it. And in doing that, I got to know him really well. I got to know how he likes to work. I got to know just how I got to understand his strengths as an actor in a very first-hand way. So I went back to The Old Man and the Gun and rewrote the project completely changed the character to make it something that he could do really well. Not that he couldn't do the other version well, but I just wasn't playing to his strengths yet. And it was so fun to get to dig back into that script and write it specifically for him. It was a real joy to do that. And then it was a joy to see him take that and do it just as well as I knew he would be able to do it. And so that's just really fun for me to be able to write for an actor and give them a part that I think they will enjoy playing, that they'll be able to play well. And as far as that movie goes, it's a completely different from all my other movies, I think, but we'll find out. I'm in the process of editing it. And one thing that I did that was interesting on this movie, in terms of the writing, we've talked about like how you are editing while you're writing, and writing while you're shooting, and shooting while you're editing. It's all blended together for me. And with this movie, when I was working on the script, I knew that it would, like, the scenes could kind of shift around. There was a lot of it was sort of modular. I could put one scene at the beginning or put it at the end, and I could see how they would work both ways. And I didn't want to settle on anything, so when we shot it, I just had the actors wear the same clothes for the entire movie for the most part. And now in the editing process, it really is, I'm really rewriting the movie because I can put any scene anywhere and it changes things. So it's a really interesting experiment in that, the three writing cliche is really coming into play this time.
We have time for one more question. Right here.
So you all write your own movies, right? And I believe that when you write the script, you should kind of can visualize it already. But I'm curious, and I feel like you already touched on this subject before, but how do the movies come out usually? Does it turn out like your vision, or at least does it align with your vision, or?
No. I don't think so. I mean, Woody Allen is famously said, like, I've never made a film, like, written a film, and, like, the movie's never come out the way that, like, I saw it in my head when I was writing it. I think movies are an organic process. I describe them, I don't have children, so I think of my movies as children. And they're gonna be what they're gonna be, to some degree. Like, you create them, you bring them into the world, but they can be like difficult children or toddlers or like cool adults. Like, you never know how they're gonna behave. Like, pre-production could really be extremely that location that was crucial to the